Hello, midlifers. Today's rich conversation with my friend and former colleague, Andi Britt, traces his retirement journey from IBM executive partner to theology student and world-class triathlete. We explore identity, purpose, faith, marriage, and the sustaining power of community. Join us now to share in Andi's Midlife Murmurings. Andi Britt, thank you for joining us on Midlife Murmurings. Please do introduce yourself to the listeners.
My name is Andi Britt. I am now a retired former senior partner at IBM, spent most of my career in management consulting, but I've now been a year retired and I now describe myself as a student. I'm in the 60-plus-year-old age category. I'm married to Jane and I've got two grown-up kids who have flown the nest.
And tell me, what does midlife mean to you, Andi?
So I think for me, midlife is a time of recalibration, reassessment. You get an opportunity, whether it is self-initiated or forced upon you, where you have to reevaluate, rethink one or more aspects of your life. It might be your career, it might be your health, it might be your marriage and your relationships. It might be your sense of who you are and sense of purpose. And it's an opportunity where you have to rethink, so how am I going to do life now with either the circumstances that face me or the issues that I've been confronted with. And I think midlife can actually happen in different dimensions. So you can have a career midlife rethink. You can have a family and marriage midlife rethink. You can have a faith or sense of purpose rethink. So you could have multiple midlife moments.
And when did midlife start for you, do you think?
So I can think of a time in my mid-40s when I had a really difficult time at work. I was working on a large project which went wrong, and that made me just think about how much store did I place in my career, my success and my reputation at work. So that was in my mid-40s. Probably as I was coming into my 50s, I think I had a major rethink in terms of my faith, my beliefs, indeed, probably some of my political views. I recalibrated those. And I would say now in retirement, I'm having to just rethink and recalibrate a little bit about how Jane and I do our marriage. So there's a kind of midlife recalibration going on there too. So it can happen at different times and has different triggers.
I'd love to hear about what that shift was for you, what the questions or challenges were with each of those phases.
So if I perhaps talk about the career one first, having had a fairly successful career up until my early 40s, I worked in professional services, in management consulting. There is a fairly standard career path that you can take. And I was successful in rising up through the ranks, even working actually as a part-time employee, which I can talk about later. And I then went on a project which in effect could have destroyed both my career and my reputation. It's one of those disaster years where you get a bad performance rating. People look upon you slightly differently because you've lost the firm some money. And indeed, your clients see you differently. So that image, that veneer of being a successful consultant was stripped away. And I had to just rethink, well, okay, who am I? What is my contribution? What am I good at? What am I not good at? And that was, I think, quite helpful in that I began to focus on actually what my real strengths were and perhaps not be as concerned about the things that I just didn't do as well as my peers. So there was quite a powerful self-assessment and realization that I kind of came to. I could have, as some people do, decided to take that opportunity to leave or to set up on my own or to do something different. But actually, I felt it was right to stick around, work through it and rebuild my career and rebuild a sense of what I wanted to do in the firm that I was working for. So that was my career.
And how did you rebuild differently with that insight?
I think I worked hard at trying to assess what my real strengths and my passions were. Basically what I was good at, those competencies that I think had got me to where I was, and then work out how I could capitalize on those going forward. Obviously, there were some things I realized I didn't do well. I was not great at leading large, complex, multi-partner IT programs for large, high-profile global clients. So I had to realize that I had a different role to play on those sorts of projects. But I then began to assess the areas where both I and my peers felt I had some real strengths. And actually, it was sometimes on the sales side of our business. Sometimes it was more on the team leadership. Sometimes it was around creating vision and developing strategy. And so for the next part of my career, I just then shifted and focused on those areas, and perhaps leaving aside some of the program leadership roles that I'd been assigned to. And in that sense, I think I realized that, previously I had been a square peg in a round hole in some aspects of my responsibilities. So it gave me a chance to move away from that and fix on the things that I was good at. And fortunately, firm that I was working for gave me the flexibility and the space to do that.
And tell me about the second one of those midlife moments.
Yeah, so my second midlife crisis was I suppose, a mid-faith crisis. And I grew up in a strong Christian church-going background. I was very keen and committed throughout my early years, my 20s and 30s. And although actually I would still say that I am as keen and committed as I was back in my 20s, I think some of my belief systems begin to change. I think I began to see actually what were the critical things that I needed to hold on to in my faith, and what are some of the things that I'd picked up over the years that I needed to declutter and I needed to set aside. And I think it gave me a chance to look again at what I believed in about, in my case, the Christian faith, and what I felt was central, and to hold on to that. And what are some of the things that had been thrown into the bucket of my faith that I felt actually I might just leave that one aside for the moment. I don't think that's what I'm gonna spend time on. And they're all the sorts of issues that actually many people in the church today are discussing. They're often in the media. And I just decided actually what I felt my focus was going to be, focus on the things that were really important. In some cases, going back to our central tenets of the Christian faith, which is reflected in the life and the ministry of Jesus. And that became really pretty central to me.
It's interesting, isn't it? That stripping away is the common theme of midlife, to get back to the essence of who we are and what we believe and what have we built around it that sort of distracts us or undermines our core values and beliefs.
Yes, I once heard it described as decluttering. And I think actually that applies in so many areas, whether you're decluttering your house, you're decluttering your life of all the busy activities, or you're, decluttering your faith and just finding out what is really core, what is central, and then holding on to that.
If I could be bold, can I ask you about the current midlife moment as well, with you and Jane as you reset?
Yeah. So as I entered into retirement, and I've really enjoyed, I've been now retired for 1 year, and I didn't fully appreciate that Jane and I had slightly different expectations as to what retirement was going to entail. So for me, there were lots of things I was really looking forward to doing. I was looking forward to doing some studying. I was looking forward to doing some more sport and exercise. And I think Jane had a set of expectations around I might be doing a little bit more in and around the house. I might be doing a bit more DIY, and I'd certainly be doing a lot more adventures with her. And because some of those latter activities were curtailed because I suddenly got excited by the studying I'm doing and the training and the triathlons that I'm competing in, she just took me aside and said, have you just replaced your work career with a new set of passions which are going to absorb you and pull you away from me as your career has done for the last 30 years. So that's kind of what we're working through now. What are both our reasonable expectations as to how we do life together, how we do marriage together, now that both of us are retired?
There's a lot of wisdom in that, a lot of questions in that. And sitting here in 2025, what wisdom do you have now that you'd like Andy in 2015 to have known?
I think the first piece of wisdom is perhaps more the reassurance about actually don't worry and don't sweat the small stuff. When I was going through the particularly tough project 13 or so years ago, a good friend of mine came alongside and said, look, the piece of advice I'm going to give you is just this. Just these 3 words: it will pass. It will pass. And I think had I known that about many of the challenges I faced in my career and family and personal life, that it will pass. There will come a time when this will not be an issue. You'll get through it. you'll be okay. You'll come out the other side. I think had I known that and been able to trust that a little bit more, I think it might have taken away some of the attendant stress of career and life that you go through in your 30s and 40s. It will pass. It's all going to be okay.
I mean, what role has purpose played in your career and now in retirement?
Yeah. So when I started my career, I always wanted a kind of clear sense of direction, and I didn't want my career and my work to be the defining factor. So fairly early on, actually, I took the decision that I wanted to work part-time. So at the time I was working for PwC. I just qualified as a chartered accountant, which kind of set me on my path to go into consultancy. And I went to my employer then and said, look, I want a career. I want to be successful, but I want to work 4 days. And they, in their wisdom, were willing to accommodate that request. And so working part-time gave me the opportunity to sort of set out the kind of dimensions of basically my whole life, not just my career, that I wanted to focus on. And I had a very clear sense. There were 4 kind of like quadrants, 4 areas. And the first one obviously was my work. That dominates most of my time. The second one was my family and my relationships, and I wanted to focus on that. The third one was health and fitness. And then the fourth one was my faith and my charitable work. And in my mind, I had a little sort of balanced scorecard of firm, family, faith, and fitness. And therefore, as I started to progress in my career, and as you know, you get set you're given a set of objectives and metrics that you need to meet every year, and you're rated on those metrics, and you're given a performance assessment and a salary increase or a bonus on the basis of those. I made sure just that mentally, I said, well, that's just only one of the scorecards I'm working to here. I've got a family and relationship scorecard that I need to keep green. I've got a health and fitness scorecard that, again, needs to be at least amber, if not green. And I've got a faith, or I've got my commitment to my local community, my local church, that I need to keep green as well. And so that if at any time one of those scorecards was red, I actually had at least 3 other scorecards that hopefully were either green or amber, that were giving me that sense of joy, fulfillment, and I was actually achieving something in life. And that was particularly helpful when the career scorecard went into red, as it did 15 or so years ago.
I think for those seeking purpose, often there's things that they know they want to get to, but can't see how they can do it whilst working full time. What encouragement or advice would you have for those who are thinking about, how do I do this in parallel to a job? I can't afford to give up a job or retire. Something else that I'm not getting to, which feels important to me.
Yeah. I suppose a dilemma which is often referred to as that kind of work-life balance, and how do you strike the right work-life balance over the course of your career? And I suppose that the first thing I would say is that it's partly how you reframe the problem, because I think in one sense, some people say there is no such thing as work-life balance, or it is a myth. And I think it's better to think of it in terms of, well, what expectations do you have in the current season for how much time you are allocating to those aspects of your life, work and your family, friends, etc. And the encouragement I would give to people is that you might be in a current season where work is all pervasive or dominant, but just think in terms of, okay, but how might it be different, let's say in 6 months' time or a year's time? And what could I do? What could I adapt to adjust so that I allowed some of these other areas of my life to flourish? And not to beat yourself up if you just find, again, you're in an intense period of work, or you're starting your own business, or you're on a really difficult project. Quite rightly, you're going to have to focus on that. But you've just got to check that doesn't become the dominant recurring pattern for the whole of your life. It's okay for a season, but it can't be the dominant pattern. And it's the same thing with your health. There may be go through a period where perhaps you're not doing a lot of exercise or not able to eat as healthily as you'd like to. That's okay. But as long as it doesn't become the defining pattern for the way that you're going to live your life. So give yourself time to stop, reflect, and then make a change. And as with most of these changes in life, whether it is some new discipline you're going to introduce into your day or into your health and fitness, or it's the way you're going to eat, you want to choose something that you know you can keep on doing. The best exercise you can do is the one that you keep doing every day or every week. And so I would encourage people, go for something that you know you can maintain, and that will give you the confidence that you can make and sustain long-term change.
Excellent. And health and exercise, I know you've touched on it a couple of times. Tell me what part that's played through your life, and especially in this midlife.
Yes. Well, I remember when I first qualified with PwC, I think my wife and I took the decision to get gym membership. Now, back in those days, that was very much a luxury. There weren't many people that kind of got gym membership, but I think it was one of the best decisions that we ever took, because it meant paying for gym membership. We would be, once or twice a week, going to the gym. And of course, that's always gets much harder when you have kids and you've got to fit that into a busy lifestyle. But I think I always knew, I think deep inside, that I would cope better with the stresses of life, physically and mentally and emotionally, if I had some form of exercise and indeed relaxation. And so fairly early on, I obviously got into running. Running took me into the sport of triathlon, which is obviously running, cycling, so swimming. And I always found that I could always make time, even in a busy professional life, I could always make time for a quick run. Or if I was working away abroad, I'd be staying in a hotel. The hotel hopefully would have a gym. So I just made it a discipline. Do some form of exercise, perhaps 2 or 3 times a week. If you can get high intensity, that really helps. If you can do some weights to strengthen the muscles, that helps as well. And I just found it so much easier to cope with just the intensity of a professional life, knowing that I'd done some exercise and I got some endorphins flowing around my body.
You've taken that on as another career, haven't you, since retiring as well?
Yeah, so I've always been interested in triathlon, and in the UK, the British Triathlon Federation have these age group races, and you can qualify for the GB team. So just before I retired, I found I'd just sneaked in a qualification for the Great Britain team for triathlon. So I do sprint triathlon and standard distance triathlons and things like that. So that's given me another incentive to train, because I know I've got a competitive race coming up, and I don't want to come last.
If you follow Andy on LinkedIn, you'll see how well he does in these events all over the place. So coming on to a question that I know is important for many, how did you actually decide when to retire from IBM?
So I suppose in the industry that I worked, professional services, so accountants, lawyers, management consultants, there used to be, and in some firms there still is, an expectation that you hit 60 and that's when they would invite you to retire. Of course, now with modern legislation, you can't do that to the same extent. But when I started my career, I think I had in my mind, okay, mid-50s or you hit 60, probably would be the time to retire. When I was then in my mid-50s and starting to look ahead, I think it was a combination of things. One, it was a time at which my kids had left home and I was able to help them with their first property, in a sense of, okay, that job is done. We've kind of seen them through school, education, and they're now living in their first house. So that was one. And those of you who are parents will appreciate that. You want to do your best for your kids. My wife had just retired. She was in the NHS and she was also working in teaching. She took the decision to retire. And so I think it was a coming together of those things. So I hit my 60th birthday, and then 3 months later, I had formally. The other thing I think played in was during COVID, we actually lost some friends, tragically died. We had some members of our extended family who got unexpected illnesses and again passed away. And so I think when Jane and I reflected on that, we realized actually we don't know how much life we get to enjoy. So rather than just keep on pushing the career indefinitely, we thought, no, now would be a good time to step back and retire. I'm fortunate enough, having worked in professional services, to have the ability to retire financially. And so we took the decision that, let's move to the next stage when we hit 60. and become economically inactive, I think is the phrase that the government uses.
And tell me, 1 year into your retirement, what lessons have you learnt?
Well, the first thing I've got just to say, I'm incredibly grateful. I have so loved being retired. I've so enjoyed not having to respond to those emails, get on the calls, produce that report, go and see that difficult client. I really have enjoyed the freedom that retirement brings. I think in terms of what I've learned, one is you still have to be careful and intentional about how you use your time. It's very easy to fritter away your time. I have enjoyed social media. I've enjoyed online streaming, but there is an infinite amount of rubbish available for you to waste your time on. So the first thing is be disciplined about your time. I think the second thing that I have learned is it's good to have a plan. Good to have a plan, not just how you're going to spend your retirement, but a plan for how you're going to use this week or this day. In every session, whether I'm doing some studying or I'm spending some time doing DIY, to kind of plan out how am I going to use this time today. Don't just crash on in. So plan how you use your time. And the third thing is just think about how you give to others. One of my reflections is that people who volunteer and give time, whether it's to charity or to the local community, seem to actually get a lot more out of life than those that just sail off around the Mediterranean or spend their life on luxury cruises. Work out what your retirement give back might be.
Thinking about the midlife murmuration, how have other people played a significant part in your midlife journey?
So I'm fortunate enough to have a group of guys that I meet up with probably twice a term. We go out for a pub meal, and our task is to look after one another and to have an opportunity to chew the cud on the issues that leave us bewildered or furious or enraged. And it's a bunch of guys, same age, similar stage of life, with kids all growing up, and we get a chance to talk through what's going on, whether that's what's going on in the news or whether that's what's going on inside ourselves. And we book a table in a local pub and spend a good 3 hours talking issues through. And at the end, we just say a quick prayer as we then depart and go back into the fray of life. So that's one community. But I've also found actually how valuable it is to have an online community. And certainly in terms of my faith journey, I came across a podcast, and there are many podcast communities out there, but this one was called the Mid-Faith Crisis. So it's relevant to the topic we're discussing. It's run by two guys, but they discuss the sorts of issues that I was going through about what I believe, what's my relationship with my church, what I believe about faith, the Bible, etc. And it's a great forum to hear these two guys discussing what their journey had been like and inviting other people to write in and share their experiences. And I found that so helpful to get into a community of like-minded people who were facing the same questions and in many cases coming up with similar answers to the answers that I was coming up with. So there's a physical community of some friends, there's an online community that I found just invaluable.
Are there parts of your ego that you've had to lay aside as you've transitioned through midlife?
I mean, I really enjoyed the status of being a senior executive at IBM. I really enjoyed being seen as a successful partner. I really loved being a great team leader and all the recognition and the encouragement and the praise that you get day in, day out. I love that. And I had to let that all go. And that's not necessarily very easy. You go from you have a status, you have a role, to, well, you don't. You're kind of nothing. You're a graying white old guy, pale, male and stale. I think I'm fortunate in that I did think through what I wanted my status to be. And because I'm both studying and because I'm doing some triathlon, I could say my status now, I'm a student or I'm a triathlete. So I did think a little bit about my identity, but I think I found it hard to let go that sense of entitlement that a lot of old white guys who've been senior executives tend to kind of carry with them. They think, well, I deserve that either because of my title or because of my salary. And my wife has been very good at reminding me that I am no longer entitled executive, and it's time to let that stage of my life go. My wife's been particularly helpful, I'd say, helping me with my ego status change.
Thank you. That's really honest and very relevant for many, I'm sure. And another question people ask as they face into midlife and think about retirement is, how much money is enough to retire on?
That's a good question. Well, so obviously, if you're in the UK at the moment, you're hit 67, and the state pension should kick in, which will give you about 10 grand. So if you're married, you've got 20 grand, the two of you. That's just from the state pension. And I think when Jane and I did our calculations, we realized that the point at which we're 67, that would only be probably half to a third of what we would need. In where we're 2025 today, we calculated that net each year, we probably need about 40k as a base. But if we wanted to perhaps live a little bit more generously, and if we wanted to enjoy, then we might need 50, possibly up to 60 grand a year net to live on. So we tried to plan our retirement, our savings. As I said, I'm fortunate in that I have something of a salary from the careers that I've had. But I pitch it between those two bars, 40 to 60. Obviously, if you really want to enjoy the luxuries or the finer things in life, whether that's holidays, dining, treats, etc., then you're going to need to go above that ceiling. But I think for Jane and I, we were saying, well, can we live within K a year? Can we live within our means and leave it at that and give the rest away?
It's quite a shift, isn't it, from the corporate world, which is you always need to be doing more and earning more, to actually, how much do I really need? And what are our needs as opposed to what are our wants?
Yep, absolutely.
Big shift. Let's look at mentoring. What role has mentorship played throughout your career, and especially through these middle years?
In my career, and particularly when I was going through some of the darker moments, it was really helpful to have a couple of wise senior people at work who I could go to and share honestly about actually how I was feeling about the role, and indeed about my status and the status of my career. And I found it just intensely helpful to get alongside some people who themselves had probably been through some kind of career defining moments or some really difficult projects, and to get the encouragement that I would get through it. So having some good mentors professionally, I found really helpful. I also had a couple of people in my local church who I could go to and share fairly openly how I was feeling, what I was worried about, how I was concerned about my career, and how it would impact my reputation. Again, they were great in just taking me out of the little bubble of my professional working environment and showing there was so much more to life than just how I was doing at work. So I had mentors in a church context as well as mentors in a working context. And as I mentioned, these 4 or 5 guys that I meet with on a regular basis, we kind of have a mentoring relationship with one another, in that we can both encourage and challenge one another on where we are at any point in time, whether that's challenging about what we're doing with our money or challenging about the status of our marriages and our relationships with our family.
Hearing you speak over the last little while, that idea of the murmuration where people come together to create something of beauty and joy is really clear. Yeah, as you talk about your family and your faith community and your work community and your friend community and even your sports community as well. It's lovely to see how they've all played a different part in your story and how you, I'm sure, have in theirs as well.
And there have been times when I think I have been able to take the lead and guide other people. There are other times when I've actually need to follow other people's examples, get in their slipstream for a period just to kind of get through a particularly intense or difficult phase of my life. And flying in a pack with other people, doing life with people has been tremendously valuable. One thing I should mention as well was that early on in our family life, when our kids were very young, we were fortunate enough to get to know 4 other families in a similar situation to ourselves. And we went on holiday together, and we went on holiday every August, 2 weeks up in the Lake District. And actually, we also met up over Christmas and New Year's same five families with our young kids. And we did that every year. And in fact, we've carried on doing it, and we do it. So this week, we're going back up to the Lake District, our annual gathering. This time, our kids are all grown up, but they're all coming with us as well. So the same 5 families, and of course, they're now expanding because the kids have got partners. In one case, the kids have got a child. So we've got the next generation. So there's 30 of us all gathering together in the Lake District, and great opportunity to reflect. How has the year been for you? Where are you at life? And helping people who are struggling, and celebrating with those who have had great years, or celebrating the birth of the first, second, third, fourth grandchild.
Sounds amazing. And what a gift. What a gift. Couple more here. Retreats. Have you found retreats helpful in these shifts of life?
I suppose because of the Christian tradition that I grew up in, I was familiar with the idea of a spiritual retreat, whether that's going away with a church group for a weekend, or whether that's going away on my own. 7 or 8 months before I retired, I was beginning to think through my plans. I took a weekend off and went and stayed in a Benedictine monastery on a silent retreat. And that gave me just really good time to reflect on what I felt the components of my retirement could be, and how I should be using my time, and what my priorities and my purpose should be. And I found that just incredibly useful in sort of laying some foundations as to what I felt God was prompting me to in my retirement years, however many I'm granted. Retreats, I'd say, if you can make the time, they are really valuable. I know some people make it a regular discipline and would go every 6 months or go every year. For me, it's been more periodic, when I felt I needed to have some time out to reflect on a particular issue, whether it's my career or my retirement or whatever.
Tell me, Andy, how's it been becoming a student again in these early 60s?
Do you know, I have loved it. Going back to university, I'm studying theology part-time at the University of Oxford, which was where I went for my first degree. It's been so good to go back and not have the angst or the self-anxiety you have when you're a young student in your late teens and early 20s. And it's also great to go back having the benefit of life experience. So everything that I'm studying, I'm able to look at and examine through the lens of someone who's had a family, who's had a career. And so there's perhaps a bit more realism and practicality that I bring to my study. And to be able to just, enjoy studying for the ability to learn something new. I'm actually trying to learn New Testament Greek as we speak. So again, it's keeping my brain buzzing. So I've enjoyed every minute of it, and it's nice to do it part-time. I don't have too many late night essay crises to distract me, or to add more grey hairs to my already greying scalp.
Final question around technology. You've spent most of your working life in technology-related consulting. How has your relationship with technology changed over the year since stepping out of it? And are there new technologies that you're actively embracing in this stage?
Well, for the last few years of my career, I was seeing the significance and the impact of AI. So as I've left the professional environment, I've tried to think through carefully about actually how I can stay with that wave, with that trend. And I try to use AI where appropriate in my studies and in my personal life. So I'm regularly going in and using AI to help me with tasks that I'm working on, whether that's helping me get to grips with a new academic subject, or whether I'm working on something with the family. I'll use AI when I can. At the same time, some technologies, let's say social media, streaming, etc., can be a real thief of time. They can suck out not just your time, but actually your energy, and distract you on things that ultimately I don't think deliver a lot of value. Technology has some real benefits. It's got some drawbacks, and I hope I can focus on the benefits and not get sucked into the less productive side of technology that can literally waste hours of your time.
Brilliant. That's been a fantastic conversation. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, experience and questions with us. How can people get in touch with you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, so Andi Britt on LinkedIn, and I still am sort of fairly active on there. Or my Instagram, which is Andi J Britt. I spell my name with an I, Andi. Or you can contact me via this podcast, and I'm happy to contact you directly.
Thank you, Andy. That's a joy, and blessings on your holiday and your next race that you're training for. and your New Testament Greek too. All the best, my friend. Cheers.
Chris, thank you for your questions. Much appreciated. Really enjoyed our conversation today.
Thanks for being here with us for Midlife Murmurings. If you enjoyed the episode, please like and subscribe and share with a friend. And do search out the Midlife Murmurings LinkedIn group to add your stories and questions to our growing midlife murmuration. Until next time, take care and fly well.